Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty RoundTable Radio Talk Show.
Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. Sam Bushman live, promoting God, family, and country, protecting life, liberty, and property, rejecting revolution unless it's a Jesus revolution, because we follow the Prince of Peace. Welcome to the show. This is October 28th, 9th in the year of our Lord, 2025, October 29th. And Bill Gates is in the news. Very strange. As you know, Bill Gates is the founder of Microsoft. When you think Windows, you think Bill Gates. But he made his fortune in computers back in the early days, late 70s, early 80s, whatever you want to say, kind of a thing. And he's been kind of a philanthropist ever since. He's gone around the world. He's involved in all kinds of projects. He owns more land in America than anybody else. He's been involved in vaccination programs. He's been involved in programs to provide birth control around the world, all kinds of things, which I personally find absolutely heinous, horrible, awful. And so he's used his money, in my opinion, for very wrongful purposes. He's been tied up with the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. Exactly what his role was and what he did, and nobody knows. We know that him and his wife got a big old divorce partly over that, etc. I mean, it's just a tragic situation for Mr. Bill Gates. But he certainly rubbed shoulders with the rich and famous worldwide. And he certainly put his money into a lot of projects that I believe are ill-advised, to say the least. But he might be making a slight change, and I don't know what it all means. But he's jettisoning this climate Chicken Little idea. The sky is falling. The sky is falling. You remember the Chicken Little story when you were a kid? He's kind of jettisoning what we would call climate alarmism. That's actually a good sign. And I hope he has in his heart a desire to tell the truth and a desire to focus on the truth. But the headline says Bill Gates, Microsoft co-founder, has released a memo downplaying climate doomsday scenarios and urging a focus on improving lives in developing nations. Now, let me be very careful, because I don't want people to call me and waste my time. Sam, Bill Gates is evil. Sam, he doesn't mean a word of it. This is just code for, I realize we've lost the alarmist debate over climate, but let's continue to abuse people around the world. That's very likely what Bill Gates is going for. He's just learned that when you lose an argument, it's better to jettison that argument, change the discussion, change the debate. So if he says, hey, everybody's going to die because of the climate, everybody's like, no, you're an alarmist. You're a nut. It isn't Chicken Little time, buddy. Forget it. But if he comes back and says something like this, hey, I would like to focus on improving lives in developing nations. See, now everybody's going to be like, hurrah, good on you, Bill. Well, I realize the sinister message in this. Don't misunderstand me. But I also want to point out the good. If he really genuinely wants to jettison climate alarmism, and he really wants to help people in poor countries around the world, bring it on, Bill. Let's do it. So how big of a check, Bill Gates, are you going to write and send to Jamaica for their horrible catastrophe? Are you going to call up the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? Are you going to call up the Catholic Church? Are you going to call up actors and actresses? Are you going to call up rock stars and musicians? Are you going to call up famous people in football? Are you, Bill Gates and Taylor Swift and some of these people, are you going to come to the table and help out the folks in Jamaica? Because if you really want to do this, if you really want to deal with climate doomsday scenarios, but you don't believe that we ought to, worry about these scenarios, but you want to worry about helping people, that's where you start. In a memo released on Tuesday, Bill Gates stated that, quote, while climate change will have serious consequences, particularly for people in the poorest countries, it will not equate to what's called human demise. Well, I'm glad you came to your senses on that, God's been telling us that the Savior Jesus Christ will come and that there'll be a righteous people ready to greet their king when he returns. And so we already knew that it wouldn't be the end of humans, Bill, even though you didn't know that. I'm glad you're learning that. So see, we can take away a lot of things from this. We can point everybody to God with this example. Hey, this doomsday climate stuff is bogus. Helping people in poorer countries, good idea, Bill. This statement, by the way, is a shift from his previous stance and comes 4 years after he published a book, quote, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster. Well, the best way you avoid a climate disaster, Bill Gates, my friend, is you turn to God Almighty. After all, God has made several statements in Scripture, biblical truths from prophets, which is, number one, multiply and replenish the earth. Just so you know, God's never rescinded that mandate. In other words, have children, form families, right? And so that's a very critical thing to understand. God has not rescinded that. That means God's not too worried about the planet being able to support the people on it. Because if the planet couldn't support the people on it, God would be saying, hey, we need to slow down having children. This world wasn't meant to support so many. But see, that's not God's plan. God has never rescinded the multiply and replenish the earth. And God has also said there's in the earth, there's plenty of room and plenty to spare. Think about yesteryear versus today in terms of what we can farm and grow. I'm not really a big corporate farm guy. I'm not a big pharma guy. I'm not a big corporation guy. But I will tell you this, whenever we think that we're running out of gas, oil, fuel, food, shelter, clothing, we go back to God's mandate that says, hey, we should feed the hungry. We should clothe the naked. We should be our brother's keeper. We should look after one another. See, all these things don't smack of climate disaster, Chicken Little, the sky is falling. No, far from. Okay? Gates's memo was released right ahead of the, quote, what do they call this thing? COP30, UN Climate Summit. It's going to basically be in Belém, Brazil, I guess is where it is. I guess Bill will not be in attendance there. That's good. Bill, maybe you ought to stay home for once, huh? The memo coincides with his 70th birthday. So when you start to become 70, you start to go, maybe it's not as I thought it was, right? And I hope that's the case. And I hope Bill Gates is genuine in this. And now we got to really start to discuss and debate. And I think this whole point by Bill Gates, this turnabout, this change in view, I hope it opens up discussions. We should care about those around the world who are suffering. We need to improve lives for people in developing nations. I agree with that 100%. Now let's let the charity of good, honest people around the world in first world countries who have finances, who have resources, who have know-how, and let them come to the table and make things better for these people. But when you start with vaccination programs, when you start with preventing children from being born, when you start with abortions or whatever you want, you're off on the wrong track. You got to start by saying, what are God's laws? What does God say? And you got to start there and say, God tells us to multiply and replenish the earth, so we welcome children. You say, Stan, there's not enough food for them. Yeah, there is. Yeah, there is. The only reason there's not enough food in many places is because wicked governments prevent the proper growing of food. So I have an uncle. He's passed away now, but he was a super farmer. He farmed potatoes and sugar beets and all kinds of different things. He was a master gardener, a master farmer. He literally went around the world on his own dime and worked with third world countries, teaching them how to farm, teaching them what to do and not to do to get the greatest yield from crops, etc. And I remember being a kid and being so impressed, thinking, man, my uncle's a hero. This guy, creates all this food for us. Then he goes around the world teaching others how to, you say give a guy a fish, you feed him for a day. You teach him how to fish, you feed him for life. He's running around teaching people how to fish. Just tremendous, tremendous stuff, in my humble opinion. Okay, so just jettison this idea that Jon Stewart's predicting Donald Trump's going to play a third term. It's all hyperbole. It's bogus. When Bill Gates, Microsoft's co-founder, says he wants to jettison this climate catastrophe, climate whatever, climate's doomsday scenarios, and he wants to help people around the world, let's take him at his word and hope he means it. And let's help define what that ought to be. Isn't that an incredible opportunity for us? I think the answer is a resounding yes. By the way, Trump's going to send $20 billion of our money somewhere. I'll tell you about it. You're watching Liberty Roundtable Live.
Are you ready to stand up for your community and support your local sheriff? Join the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association and become a vital member of the Sheriff's Citizens Posse. At cspoa.org, we empower citizens like you through weekly webinars, arming you with the knowledge to back your constitutional county sheriff. Together, we can uphold our Constitution and ensure liberty and justice for all. Your community needs you now more than ever.
This is a battle between truth and deceit. A battle between forces that would enslave this country in darkness and between a media that wants to present you with the truth. We are being censored. America's news outlets no longer provide the truth. 90% of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in fact.
TheEpochTimes.com.
As a parent, is receiving a faith-based, character-focused education for your children difficult to find? Do you believe that godly principles should be a central component in your child's education? Imagine a school where faith and integrity are at its center, where heritage and responsibility instill character. For over 40 years, American Heritage School has been educating both hearts and minds, bringing out academic excellence. This is the school where character and embracing the providence of a living God are fundamental, where students' national test scores average near the 90th percentile. With American Heritage School's advanced distance education program, distance is no longer an issue. With an accredited LDS-oriented curriculum from kindergarten through 12th grade, your children can attend from anywhere in the world. American Heritage School will prepare your child for more than a job. It will prepare them for life. To learn more, visit american-heritage.org. That's american-heritage.org.
All right, I don't know if we can talk a single day, a single segment, without it being about Donald Trump. To me, to be honest with you, it's just starting to get old. Trump doesn't need to be in every story. I get that he's the president of the United States. He should be the humble servant of us all. I get that he's got delegated authority. He should look at his list and focus on it big time. But in the meantime, every story doesn't need to be about Donald Trump. But in this case, I'm not really pleased with what he's doing. Headline says Trump's $20 billion Argentina deal. Did you know Trump had a $20 billion Argentina deal? They say that it raises alarm. Critics, and I'm one of them, question where the president got the authority for this. It's not in his list to hand out $20 billion to Argentina, right? Well, Donald Trump's $20 billion agreement with Argentina, they say, has ignited a constitutional debate over presidential spending power. It's a fair, honest, needful debate, I might add. The deal was arranged through the U.S. Treasury Exchange Stabilization Fund. They call the thing ESF, the Exchange Stabilization Fund. It bypasses Congress entirely, ladies and gentlemen. You comfortable with that? I'm not. Why? Because when you look at the Constitution, the House of Representatives controls the purse strings. All bills that require funding or expenditures are supposed to originate in the House. Just so you know, back in 1934, crisis time, the Depression, right? Created in 1934 to manage emergency currency interventions, the ESF allows the Treasury Secretary to deploy U.S. dollars abroad with only the president's approval. I have a problem with that. No vote, no appropriations, no public disclosures, nothing until after the fact. Now, why does this even exist today? The answer is because Congress is great at creating things that displace their authority and power, and they're horrible about reining in out-of-control government. This is out of control. President Trump has no right, no authority whatsoever. I don't care about this 1934 law or not. Any law that conflicts with the supreme law of the land, the Constitution, should be null and void, people. You got that? Null and void. Dead on arrival. All right? Bypassing Congress entirely. You think the founders were okay with that? Not a chance. Financial and legal experts warn that Donald Trump's, quote, treasury brokered $20 billion. They call it a currency swap with Argentina. And the central bank, crafted without congressional approval, may overstep executive power. I say will. But this is an example of, they call it a swap. He's not just giving them $20 billion, they say. At first, the headlines make it seem like he's just giving them $20 billion. It's not really what's happening. He's doing a swap. I guess he's going to get Argentine currency or whatever. I'm not comfortable with any of this, folks. Okay? Why are we allowing this to happen? You say, well, back in 1934, what was that, 91 years ago? And you're telling me that we have to follow this 91-year-old rule when we're $38 trillion in debt? When Congress is simply sitting home twiddling their thumbs because, in my humble opinion, Mike Johnson is not working for a living, if you will. Okay, this is disaster. Government seems to be completely broken. It's falling apart. When I get on the TV and radio with Dr. Scott Bradley and we talk about this, and I always bring this to the brink, it's like, it's just disaster. And Dr. Bradley wisely said, well, Sam, what do you think we should do? Because you get out of options. You get frustrated about it, like there's no good answers. And I remind everyone that's true. And from a political sense, oftentimes there are no good answers. That's true as could be, right? But I want you to understand there are answers. It's just that the answers aren't always political. The answers aren't always where we look, which seems to be government all the time. Congress should step up and stop the president and say, no, Donald, you're just not giving $20 billion to Argentina. You're not doing that. Number one, we don't have the money. And number two, it's not been passed as a law. And yeah, this 1934 clown show where we, wrongfully gave up our authority and power and transferred it illegally to the president, that's going to stop too. That's what we need to do. Okay? Understand, folks, we need to stand on principle for once. I agree with these financial and legal experts warning that this is not really constitutional. You're basically using too much executive power. You're overstepping your authority. That's where Donald is on this one. And I don't mean to attack Donald Trump. Like I say, I like a lot of what he does. I'm not a never Trumper, and I'm not an always Trumper. I call myself a Trump realist. And I say that he's got to stop this. He doesn't have authority. I know he thinks he might. I know he's thinking he's doing good. He's helping out a buddy. The guy in Argentina is a pretty good guy, from what I understand. He's helping out a buddy. That's fine. But do it on your own dime, Donald. That's right. If you go look at Davy Crockett, it's not yours to give. Don't give for the treasury. Don't give from the people. You don't have authority for that. If you want to give your own money to do it. If you want to talk to Bill Gates. Remember, Bill Gates says his goal is to help people around the world, suffering people. Well, if the Argentine people are suffering or the government needs support, Bill and Donald, you guys can take care of it. Between the two of you, you got plenty of money. You can raise money for that cause. Now you got to work on the Argentine need. You got to work on the Jamaican need. And you got to work on the SNAP, internal American starvation need. You got a lot of work out there, buddy. But don't take my money for it. Don't do that. Let me be very clear with you to make the point. This is really important. 75% of federal spending is tied up in entitlements and interest. The madness must stop. Okay? First off, the interest. Why are we paying some clown banking cartel, the Federal Reserve, and why have we been doing this for over 100 years, a bunch of interest? As if they somehow have given us something that we need from them, and therefore we got to pay. We should jettison that tomorrow. Why doesn't Donald go back to United States notes where there's no interest charged? Why do we need the Federal Reserve at all? By the way, they're supposed to be deliberating today and lowering the interest rate. Well, I hope they lower the interest rate because it needs to be done. But why even think we have to control the interest rate? Does government have to control everything? I think not. Why don't we just simply let the interest rate, like any other commodity, fluctuate with supply and demand? That's what ought to happen. If there's more need for money, the interest rates can go up. If there's less needs for money, the interest rates can go down. But you've got a moral hazard where government's literally got 75% of federal spending tied up in, quote, entitlements. In other words, redistribute wealth programs, Ponzi schemes, if you want to know the truth of it, along with interest. Why are we paying that kind of interest? The madness must stop. America's budget has been hijacked. 75% of spending locked in entitlement and debt payments. Time to act, ladies and gentlemen. Entitlements and debt interest eat 75% of every tax dollar. Is that just going to go up? How high can it go? When will we be able to do something about that? Anyway, all I'm telling you is it's very interesting. Why would Mike Johnson just be sitting at home or shutting down Congress? Why doesn't he come in and say, hey, while the government's shut down, let's at least pass and send to the Senate ways to reduce the size and scope of government. The National Taxpayers Union, NTU, for example, along with many other organizations, Ron Paul and Campaign for Liberty, the John Birch Society, even Rand Paul in the Senate, our buddy Thomas Massey in the House, Mike Lee in the Senate. Many of these people have put together plans and ideas. There's been books written about government waste. And why don't we just start to say, while the government's shut down, we're going to reduce government waste. We're going to slim our budget. That's what families do when they don't have enough money, right? They simply go in and say, all right, honey, we got to sit down and talk about the budget. We're spending too much money. Listen, I know you love those Oreos, but you know what? We got to skip Oreos for a little while because, man, we're running, we have these needs and we have these, you can't have Oreos or whatever the case may be. I know that's a simple, stupid example, but it makes the point. What's the equivalent of Oreos at the government level? Maybe we don't send $20 billion to Argentina. Might that be a start? We don't have it to send to Argentina. It's the problem. It's not that I hate Argentina or I want to be bad to Argentina or anything. We just don't have it. All right, Donald Trump awarded the Medal of Freedom to Charlie Kirk, which was great. I thought it was awesome. Charlie Kirk deserves it. However, his widow revealed, and I don't know if you realized that back then, that he planned a presidential run. Cole Harrison wrote the piece. Did you know Charlie Kirk was planning to run for president? Just thought you ought to know that. All right, I'm Sam Bushman. Hang tight. I've got a whole lot more news the networks refuse to use straight ahead, okay? If you want to check out the award-winning, incredible TV and radio productions we produce on a daily basis, check out lovingliberty.net. It's getting better daily. The things we're doing are tremendous. We're also partnering with Liberty Village. You got to dig that destination, too. LibertyVillage.org. Check it out. I'm Sam Bushman. Hang tight. Liberty Roundtable Live continues in seconds.
How would you like to help this program reach more people and earn silver at the same time? Call or text 801-669-2211 for complete details.
Breaking news this hour from Town Hall. I'm Rich Thomason. President Trump's Asia tour has taken him to South Korea, where he's taken the wraps off a new trade agreement.
On the last stop of his Asia trip, the president announced that a deal had been struck and was pretty much finalized. Later, the South Korean government confirmed a $350 billion investment package in the U.S. to include cash payments and shipbuilding cooperation. Also, U.S. tariffs on South Korean cars will be lowered from 25 to 15%.
White House correspondent Greg Clugston says tomorrow Mr. Trump will meet with Chinese President Xi. The two leaders expected to announce a U.S.-China trade pact. From east to west, Hurricane Melissa tearing a path across Cuba, and now is a Category 2 storm after pounding Jamaica as one of the strongest Atlantic hurricanes on record.
Hurricane Melissa made landfall overnight in Cuba as a Category 3 hurricane. Hurricane specialist Brad Reinhardt of the National Hurricane Center in Miami says Melissa isn't as strong as when it pummeled Jamaica, but it's still powerful enough to generate a storm surge of up to 12 feet.
Correspondent Donna Warder says once it's done with Cuba, the storm will cut a path across the Bahamas. A local mayor says 25 people have died in southern Haiti after a river swollen by the hurricane burst its banks. The head of the World Health Organization says more than 460 people have reportedly been killed in a hospital in Sudan's western Darfur region, overrun by Sudanese paramilitary forces over the weekend. Israel says the Gaza ceasefire is back on track after overnight airstrikes prompted by the killing of an Israeli soldier. Israel says it will honor the ceasefire but will retaliate for violations of the agreement by Hamas. Stocks rallying on Wall Street. The Dow is up 253 points. The Nasdaq trading 139 points higher. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Hey, I'm Mike Slater. My dad passed away at the age of 63. It's out of nowhere. Had a stroke. Super hard, obviously, for the whole family, but my dad had life insurance. This is why I have life insurance for my family, for my wife and 4 kids. And the best place to get life insurance is ethos.com, because you can do it in 10 minutes. And there's no medical exam and no blood test, just a few health questions. Get life insurance in 10 minutes so your family is protected. Ethos, E-T-H-O-S, ethos.com/Mike.
Todd Nettleton, who is the voice of the Martyrs radio host, he's traveled to all these restricted nations for over 20 years and met these courageous Christians, and he's written a book, When Faith is Forbidden, 40 Days on the Front Lines with Persecuted Christians. We want you to check it out. You can request a free copy by calling 844-463-4059, or you can visit vom.org/unashamed. Check it out. You will be inspired by this book.
Scott Bradley here. Most Americans are painfully aware that the nation is on the wrong track and in dire straits. Unfortunately, most political pundits only nibble around the edges when they claim to address the issues. Even worse, many of the so-called solutions are simply rewarmed servings of what got us into the mess we currently face. And the politicians think we're so gullible and naive that we'll buy their lies that they have reformed and now understand where they led us astray. Unfortunately, the truth of the matter is that they simply wish to continue to hold power. The solution to America's challenges is found in returning to the timeless principles found in the United States Constitution. My book and lecture series will reawaken in Americans an understanding and love of the principles which made this nation the freest, most prosperous, happiest, and most respected nation on earth. Visit topreservethenation.com and order my book and lectures to begin the restoration of this great nation.
Looking for an IT partner that truly understands your needs? Managed IT Services is the answer. We meet with you regularly to discuss your goals and form a tailored technology plan. Our customers have called us a trusted advisor who delivers. When it comes to IT, we do it all. Firewalls, cloud storage, server migration, and more. Say goodbye to long-term contracts and hello to a team that earns your business month after month. Call 801-706-6980 now and let Managed IT Services transform your IT experience.
Have you ever had great honey? No, I mean really good, all-natural, raw honey? Well, now you can, thanks to localhoneyman.com. We can ship out our locally made honey all across the U.S. So don't worry, you won't miss out. Plus, Local Honeyman has so many different flavors, like Utah Wildflower, High Desert Delight, Happy Valley, and Blackberry, just to name a few. So purchase your delicious raw honey today at localhoneyman.com.
All right, back with you live. I was mentioning that Donald Trump awards Medal of Freedom to Charlie Kirk, and, well, he was thinking about running for president before they murdered him. Who murdered him? Don't know. A lot of people want to tell you they know, and I don't. I know this. We need to make sure that his legacy continues. If we can't find Charlie Kirk for president, who can run in 2028? There's a lot of people that I would like to consider. Rand Paul would be one of them. Mike Lee would be another. Are they perfect? No. Are there better candidates? Probably. But the fact is, these guys are, I believe, honorable. You could say, well, Sam, there's a lot of people that would be better than those guys. You're probably right, but do they have the national recognition and, household name? No, Sam, but that could be built. It only can be built if the media wills that to be built. Right now, the media's got a juggernaut, a hold, a control, if you will, on our lives. It's disaster. And as long as that stands, the media still rules the day. They can take a person and make them a household name in a second. Who am I talking to? Think about Barack Obama. You didn't know who that clown was. He became a one-term senator and then president of the United States. Boom, ba-da-ba-ba, boom. The media and behind the scenes, people who are not into elections, they're into selections. They're the ones that made that happen. Okay? So understand that it's hard to get a household name. That's why most people who run for the presidents, or run to be president of the United States, I was going to say the presidential ticket is what I was about to say. But anyway, those who, 9 times out of 10, they've been senators or governors, or at least served in the House of Representatives. They've got kind of a track record, or they've been the attorney general of a given state, or they've done something big in politics. Otherwise, and this is without evidence, I might add, the mainstream press loves to say without evidence, so let's use that term. They say without evidence that, hey, people who haven't been in government they lack the experience, they can't get it done. Why do I say without evidence? Because, well, Trump wasn't in government before, and he's getting it done. In fact, they used to say, oh, he's a clown, he'll never make it. And then they said, oh, well, he made it, but it was a fluke. And then they said, oh, he committed fraud and made it. And then they said, oh, actually, Trump's pretty good, he's just evil. And then they said, oh, wow, President Trump is incredibly talented at all the things they used to say that he wasn't. Well, before he wasn't, he was. Remember, they loved him when he was just a businessman, a media mogul, The Apprentice, whatever, when he was that guy. They all loved him when he cameoed in movie after movie after movie. They loved him. Then they hated him, and now they're back to thinking he's all right again. Well, he's sure crafty. He's sure this. They got all kinds of words for him. But in the end of the day, who can we have run for president? It can't be the Donald. It shouldn't be the Donald. I criticize him for his $20 billion spending on Argentina. Shame on President Trump for that. Right? I'm just going to add shame before this headline. Shall I put that? There you go. All right. Now, I don't know where to go with this when all of our spending is just out of control. It's all interest and it's all entitlement programs. If you want to solve the problem, you've got to attack that interest and you've got to attack the entitlement programs. When was the last time somebody went back to the Federal Reserve and said, hey, whether you get rid of the Federal Reserve or not is a different question. I think we ought to just abolish the clowns, shut them down. They're criminals. Okay, but if you're not going to do that, why don't you become the art of the deal, Donald? And why don't you go and negotiate instead of around the world with all these foreign leaders, hanging out with the Japanese, getting these special gifts and all this kind of stuff? Why don't you go to the Federal Reserve banking cartel, invite them in to the White House, do it on the White House lawn, have all the media there. And why don't you just negotiate with the Federal Reserve to reduce the interest rate because we're paying too much interest on our debts? Isn't that what we should do? The budget's hijacked. Government's been hijacked and shut down. Why don't we go ahead and just negotiate a lower interest rate at the Fed? Anyway, just saying there's a lot of solutions. And how many people are bringing up these ideas? I'm just a one-man think tank, I guess. Actually, I'm not very smart at all. I'm just bringing up common sense things that for some reason nobody in the mainstream wants to talk about. You say, Sam, Congress has already tried to put forward several bills. The reason they're just sitting back at the House is because the Senate's got to do their job. Well, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that at all. You could continue to fund little bits of the government. Just create a traffic controller bill. I've mentioned that forever. Now, even though I'm not for government funding SNAP, what you might say is we're going to fund half of SNAP. That's right. We're going to fund half of it. And the states are going to pick up the other half. And if the states want to rely on Christians and churches and NGOs and nonprofits and food pantries and food kitchens and so on, by all means. See, that way you're backing out of a government program. You're signaling that this won't last forever, but you're also not crashing the plane and leaving people hungry. Because when you crash the plane, figuratively speaking, and leave people hungry, then you're going to get the blame. It's not going to go well for Trump and those guys to pull the rug out from under 42 million people and their food stability. That's not going to go well for you, especially when you have the government shut down and you're sending $20 billion to Argentina. Why should the Argentina people get $20 billion and SNAP be held on a hiatus? Or what's the term I like to use? The budget's been hijacked. That's what I'm talking about. Okay, why? So your best bet is to say, we at the feds, we're going to bring back, the bill says, we're going to bring back half of SNAP's funding while the government shutdown occurs until a bill replaces this one. It's going to temporarily, deal with SNAP. Now let's see who's for and against SNAP. Yeah. Now, the reason they say they're shutting down the government and that they can't come back and do what I'm proposing is because Mike Johnson and those guys say people will get the wrong idea about government. They'll get confused with, is it really open or is it closed or what's happening? People are already confused about that. Why? Because you're still getting paid, Mike Johnson. As long as you're getting paid, I'm confused if government's open or not. Furthermore, while you sit at home twiddling your thumbs, buddy, and you've done nothing in over a month, you've literally wasted 2 months of this whole congressional session. Now I'm kind of wondering, I'm really confused because why are we paying you to keep government shut down? Why are we doing that at all, Mike Johnson? I'd rather fund SNAP than pay you, buddy. Oh, that's a grand idea. Why don't we have all the congressmen and senators fund SNAP? Hey, your check's going to SNAP until this gets solved. Now, I don't know how much the average congressional member gets paid now, but just say it's $200,000 times 535, right? 107 million. Is that what it is? Let me do this again. 525 times 200,000. 105 million, whatever the number is. Okay, fine. Will that help? If we take the 20 billion back that we're not going to give Argentina now, and we put 105 million in there, and Congress sits there and it doesn't get paid, but SNAP continues. See, that's what we got to do. All right. Anyway, sad tale to tell. We need a full pardon for our dear friend Steve Stockman, ladies and gentlemen. We've mentioned that over the last several years. Donald Trump did a commuting for Steve Stockman, and we're grateful for that, President Trump. At the same time, we need a full pardon for Steve Stockman. If anybody deserves a full pardon, it is our dear friend Steve. Meanwhile, I got a shame on the Donald, though. George Santos commutation sparks outrage and calls for accountability. Why are we giving this George Santos, this Republican clown? And why do I call him a clown? Because this guy literally committed all kinds of fraudulent activities, admitted to it and everything else, and now Donald protects this guy? But he won't pardon Steve Stockman? Wow. The same person that attacked Steve Stockman is the one that attacked and gave Trump such trouble, right? All right. Anyway, there's another program that's been partially shut down, although people are rioting about it now. Okay? It's called Voice of America, VOA, Voice of America, right? It's a federal news agency, they claim. It was founded back in 1942, ladies and gentlemen. It has traditionally, they say, provided extensive Persian language coverage, but shifted programming focus in June during a live broadcast of the U.S. military procession displacing coverage of Israel's attack on Iran. So now you get this situation where this group, this Voice of America, is supposed to be covering things. They literally don't cover Israel out of control attacks. Oh man, isn't Israel attacking Gaza right now? The ceasefire's kind of melted down. Is that what's right? Is that what's happening? Okay. But this Voice of America is government propaganda. President Trump has targeted the VOA, disrupting its operations by dismantling its parent organization. I'll tell you about that in seconds, okay? I'm telling you, this is big news because we've got a lot of money we could point to different solutions, right? Hang tight. Liberty Roundtable Live.
Why don't we say to the government writ large that they have to spend a little bit less? Anybody ever had less money this year than you had last? Anybody ever having a 1% pay cut? You deal with it. That's what government needs, a 1% pay cut. If you take a 1% pay cut across the board, you have more than enough money to actually pay for the disaster relief. But nobody's going to do that because they're fiscally irresponsible. Who are they? Republicans. Who are they? Democrats. Who are they? Virtually the whole body is careless and reckless with your money. So the money will not be offset by cuts anywhere. The money will be added to the debt, and there will be a day of reckoning. What's the day of reckoning? The day of reckoning may well be the collapse of the stock market. The day of reckoning may be the collapse of the dollar. When it comes, I can't tell you exactly, but I can tell you it has happened repeatedly in history when countries ruin their currency.
As you are aware, America is divided over every fault line possible. This is intentionally fostered by those who do not love God, family, or country. We believe a peaceful future as a free people absolutely depends on civility. Clarion Call for Civility is looking for funding and volunteers at every level to make our hopes and efforts a reality. Please donate, sign our pledge, and help us in our sacred cause. Please visit callforcivility.com for more details. Callforcivility.com.
Bypass the mainstream narrative with Liberty News Radio at libertynewsradio.com. Engage with charismatic hosts live or on demand. We cover the crucial news focused on God, family, and country. News that other networks simply refuse to use. Think of LNR's hard-hitting news and podcast at your fingertips, anytime, anywhere. Join us at libertynewsradio.com. Empower your day with the truth, because the truth will set you free. libertynewsradio.com.
It's called Voice of America, VOA. It's a federal news agency founded in 1942. President Trump has targeted this Voice of America, VOA, disrupting its operations by dismantling its parent organization. This is really important to learn about and understand, folks. The U.S. Agency for Global Media is what it's called. Do we need the U.S. Agency for Global Media? Does the government really need to promote media around the world? He did this back in March, and he subsequently is placing nearly 1,400 staff members on leave. I appreciate that temporary effort, but there you go. U.S. courts have intervened, mandating the continuation of news broadcasting and what they call the funding of related news groups. Listen to this, like Radio Free Europe. Why do we need a Radio Free Europe? Radio Liberty, Radio Free Asia, and the Middle East broadcasting networks. Why do we need all those? Right? Despite court orders, Voice of America programming was halted amid government shutdown. Sounds great, right? No. Listen to the rest of the sentence. Despite court orders, the VOA programming was halted amid a government shutdown, but they're maintaining what's called minimal broadcasting compliance. What does that mean when you say we're shutting you down because the government shut down? The court says you got to fund this stuff. And then, You got to continue the news. So is it a mandate from the courts? Is it minimal broadcasting compliance? Who determines that? In other words, the thing's still running. It's not shut down at all, people. Now, it might be spending less than it once was. But how much? Will there be back pay? What? Okay, this is just a clown show. Trump officials argue that a shift towards promoting his administration's policy is a departure from VOA's, or Voice of America's, mission of what they call independent journalism. So let me ask you a question, my fellow Americans. Do you believe that the government can provide independent journalism around the world? They say the conflict over Voice of America's future is ongoing, marked by, quote, legal disputes and partisan disagreements over its funding and operation. Isn't that what we started this program about? Saying they're arguing and fighting about everything. Food stamps, this, that, Medicare, government, Obamacare, this, that, whatever. And now the same thing. You got this VOA's futures in debate because of the same discussions. It's disaster. So I don't even know what it means when it was shut down, but it's minimal broadcasting compliance. I don't know what that means. I don't see how it's shut down if it's really that. Now, I don't know why the courts would intervene and mandate the continuation of this, quote, news broadcasting. But here's my question for Mike Johnson. If the courts are saying by law it's got to be funded, then Mike Johnson, wouldn't you be smart in the House of Representatives right now to pass a bill and to put a bill up that says, hey, we're going to defund Voice of America. We're going to dismantle the parent organization entirely, okay? We're going to get rid of. So here's what the bill says. We hereby shut down permanently the U.S. Agency for Global Media. How much money would that save? Then Mike Johnson could come to the mainstream media and tell everybody, hey, I've shut down this propaganda peddling group around the world. I shut down the U.S. Agency for Global Media because it's not necessary. We don't have the money for it, and therefore it's not good. We're not keeping it. But see, you got all kinds of government agencies that want to promote it, from National Public Radio internally to public broadcasting, whatever, PBS, whatever, to all these programs around the world. Why is the government in the media at all? You say, Sam, because the government needs to tell their side of the story. That's what whitehouse.gov/ what was it? News, media, something. Whitehouse.gov/ something. That's what that's for. Everybody can go there and check it out. Donald also owns his own platform, by the way. He could tell it on Truth Social. We don't need these government groups. Why do I have to fund those groups with my tax dollars and fund my own broadcast efforts against what they're doing? Why do I got to do all that, huh? Anyway, I find it fascinating. I find it sad. Why doesn't Mike Johnson get back and do something about that? There's so many different government waste programs, unnecessary expenditures that we could reduce. Donald's negotiating our interest rate down with the Fed while Mike Johnson's shutting down the propaganda arm of government, Global Media, right? Just think what could be done if these people would take action. But you got Mike Johnson sitting on a thumb, and you got Donald Trump out of the country. Therefore, everything is stuck on stupid here in the homeland, while Snap's about to let people starve, while we send $20 trillion to Argentina. At some point, you go, man, I want off this merry-go-round. Speaking of off the merry-go-round, Sonny Hostin's in the news. She said that she brought her son to the police on The View to prevent harassment and calls from her all-white neighborhood. Carlos Garcia brings the story from theblaze.com to me, okay? Now, I want somebody to look up Sonny Hostin. Any of my producers, just type in Sonny Hostin photo, and I want you to tell me if she's white or black, because I understand that her son is black, and the reason that she brought her son to the cops to prevent harassment is she's like, look, this is my son. he's raising money for this event, for school or whatever he's doing. And by the way, I don't want you to harass him since he's black. I don't want you to harass him since he's black and all this kind of stuff. And we need you to know his name, and we need to let you know he's here. He's legitimately here. He's not stealing stuff. He's fine. And she said she had to go do that to the cops. But then here's what's interesting about this. She brought her son to the cops to prevent harassment. Calls from her all-white neighborhood. Now, as far as my understanding, my producer looked up a photo and said, Sam, she's black. Because see, how would I know what color she is? You follow? Anyway, so if she's black and she lives there, how can it be an all-white neighborhood? Can you help me with that? I'm not very smart. You got this all-white neighborhood, then you got this black person's home right in that neighborhood. Is that an all-white neighborhood, guys? How many other black people? Okay, predominantly a white neighborhood. Fine. Well, then my question to Sonny is this. Why do you live there? Do you want to live in a neighborhood that your son's being harassed in? See, if my children were being harassed and it couldn't be stopped, I would move. And don't tell me Sonny doesn't have the money to move. Oh, yeah, she's black. She's mixed Puerto Rican. And her son is what? An African American. And I don't know what her son is then, because I don't know who the father is. He might be whatever. And I'm not here to make fun of the Puerto Ricans or the blacks or the whites or anybody. All I'm saying is I don't know how you call it an all-white neighborhood when you're a black family living there, or a Puerto Rican or not white family living there. And I don't understand why you wanted to move into that neighborhood in the first place. If my children were being harassed in a neighborhood, I would leave. You say, Sam, that's not right. You shouldn't just leave. The harassment needs to stop. I know. I get it. But I don't want neighbors that are like that. I want neighbors that I can borrow a cup of sugar from. I want neighbors, if I got a problem and I need a ride somewhere, there's an emergency, that they would help me and I could trust them and count on them. And you're telling me you're living in a neighborhood where they're harassing your son? Well, then they don't know your son. Maybe the best thing to do is have your son go around and knock on doors and say, hey, my name is so-and-so, and here's what I'm in your neighborhood to do. I just want to let you know. Here's a flyer promoting what I'm doing, and just, But if I live in a neighborhood and I can't even stop them from harassing my children, I won't be there very long. And you say, well, Sam, you shouldn't let the neighbors drive you out. I know. I agree. But at the same time, you can't force people to love you. You can't force people to be kind to you. How are you going to do that? Well, if you can't do that, then what happens in hard times? They harass your son in good times. But what if pardon the phrase, crap hits the fan? There's no SNAP money, and so people are starving for food, and they start roving your neighborhood. Are your neighbors going to protect you? If you go on vacation, will they be glad to watch your house and, water your plants and whatever needs to be, get the mail, whatever needs to be done? So anyway, I don't mean to be rude to her, but I don't know how she talks about an all-white neighborhood when she's a black family or a not white family living there. And then she goes off and says she had to take her son to the cops. I'd like somebody to verify that story. And I'd also like to say, why is she living in that neighborhood anyway? If it's such a horrible neighborhood of evil people, white ones for that matter, just white people, crazy white people, thinking all blacks are criminals, just horrible. Why would you even move in there in the first place, Sonny? Why don't you roll down there where there's a lot of other people that, where there's diversity? Because you're all about celebrating diversity, you follow? Why don't you roll where there's a bunch of diversity and put your family there? You'll get a lot less harassment if you do that. Oh, I get it. What you want is white privilege. And then you want to use that as a race card? I don't think so. I'm disappointed, Sonny. But I will openly invite you to the broadcast. If you want to come on the show with me and talk about it, you're talking to a blind person. I don't even know what color you are. I'm told you're black. That might be true, but I don't understand if you're in an all-white neighborhood how you can even live there. It would make it not an all-white neighborhood if you're there. I'm just saying. All right, I'm Sam Bushman. Thanks for being alongside for the ride. Hopefully it's educational and entertaining. If you want to check out more of our incredible work around the clock, check out lovingliberty.net. Incredible network of talk shows, news stories, TV shows, radio shows. The list goes on and on. We're also partnering with libertyvillage.org. Check that out, too. I'm Sam Bushman. God save the Republic of the United States of America.